Hello and welcome to Eye-Opener. So, as you might have followed our program, there was a calendar released by IIT Kharagpur, and the calendar, talked about the Indian knowledge system, and it debunked a lot of theories, a lot of research that people have done for the past 200 or 250 years, and they are proposing a new theory. They are proposing that Aryan invasion theory is a myth, and the Indian history that we have studied so far and the Indian knowledge system that we understood so far is totally erroneous, and the Vedic Indian knowledge system is what the original, and that's how you should understand India. So, in order to do that, they have come up with a 12-month calendar from January to the
person whom
month
you're
of
trying
December
to reach is currently unavailable.
2022.
Please leave a message after the beep.
So, in order to understand them, in order to understand the claims made by IIT Kharagpur, we did some programs and we invited some reputed educationists, reputed university scholars, reputed university professors, and we conducted some discussions in this area. And likewise, a lot other channels, probably some television channels, and also some written media or print media also conducted some discussions on this. And as a result of that, looks like Professor Joy Sen, who is the key contributor, who also works with Nehru Museum, he came up in defense of his theory that he proposed in the calendar, and he said, no, that is basically the colonial mindset with colonial hangover that these people are speaking. So, these are very interesting comments as the print publishes it. Very interesting comments, and we will see whether what he said is true or not, whether what he is, whether his perspective is true or not. At the same time, in this program, we will also be discussing about the February's portion of the calendar that talks about the cyclic, time and reincarnation. The concept that has been that is proposed and published by IIT Kharagpur, calendar IIT Kharagpur for 2022. So, cyclic times and reincarnation is the buzzword for this month as they propose. So, we will see, we will try and understand whether their perspective is correct or not, whether they are coming from a research point of view or trying to impose sentiments on people, or is it really worth worth our time just to go through and understand whether what they do is true or not. And very interestingly, we also see that there are swastikas on that screen that you see, which talks about the cyclic time according to Professor Joy Sen and others who prepared this calendar. And also, very ironically, we also see a cross or a plus sign in the same print, and we see an animal with different symbols in it, and we wanted to understand what does it mean, and how the symbol of swastika is a symbol of karma and reincarnation as the calendar assumes. So, join with me in welcoming Jerry Thomas with me. He's from Mumbai. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Praveen.
So as we have done a couple of programs in the past, and now we are doing the same, the understanding from our side towards a calendar like this that is produced by IIT Kharagpur. We have already, given explanation for the month of January, and also overall representation of how the calendar looks like. If you want to start with the summary or the overall what we did for the month of January, and as a summary of the whole calendar, and then please proceed further into the month of February. Also comment on what Professor Joy Sen had to say in rebutting or in giving response to what people like us are doing.
So thank you very much, Praveen. Let me begin by responding to Professor Joy Sen, because the accusation is severe. So just to give a background of decolonization, decolonization is an Latin American construct It's a theory given by Latin American scholars. Now, decolonization is the buzzword for Hindutva in India. If you not just merely Professor Joyson, who is the brain behind this calendar, even if you look like people like Sai Deepak,
Yes.
who is the new icon for the Hindutva in India, they all speak the language of decolonization. But
Before you move further, I wanted to ask a question particularly about they all speak the same language. Are you referring to some very carefully structured and engineering program behind it?
It seems so. If you look at the pattern that is emerging, all of them, whether it is the Honorable Prime Minister PM Narendra Modi, or it is the IIT professor like Joy Sen, or it is a Supreme Court lawyer like Sai Deepak, they all seems to be using exactly the same word. So it looks like it is an orchestrated narrative.
Again, your comments are referring to a top-down trickle method, or trickling down from the top to others, so that the narrative goes into the masses, while these people who can influence educated in English through these material like calendar and other print material, also digital material, they are creating a narrative so that the masses can pick it on. Is that what you're trying to say?
At least by looking at the pattern that is emerging, it appears to be so, though we cannot 100% conclude it is to be so. But given the past track record of all these people who are involved, they are capable of doing that, building up the narrative to name and label anybody who opposes them or critique them. So the moment you...
So can't we see this calendar, produced by a known government institution? Though IITs are generally autonomous, I mean, I don't exactly know how it functions, but these institutions are run run at least or governed by the AICTE and maybe a little bit of UGC. I don't know whether I have no great details in that, but prestigious and reputed institutions like this are speaking the terminology, speaking the language of the popular majoritarian government's language. So can this be a kind of an evidence that the government is running this government, or people who wants their Hindutva ideology desperately want to prove that the Aryan immigration or Aryan invasion or Aryan settlement in India didn't happen, so that there is an upper edge, there is a different uneven playground to play or settle with the locals. Is that what, as a lot of thinkers also had to say? Example, last time we spoke in this program, we had a professor from the University of Chennai, and this is what he presented. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I saw that episode you had with Professor Karnanandan, and exactly I agree with him. So the basic agenda is to say that everything is from the Vedas, everything is from the Brahmanical culture, and thereby marginalize all the other cultures, the Dravidian culture, or the others who have worked and who have paid with their lives for this country. Remove all of them and only focus on the Brahmanical culture. That seems to be the agenda. Definitely, that is the agenda of the Brahmanical system, and these institutions and the other people are playing along with that. They are all, even if they are not connected organizationally, they are definitely connected in an ideological way, and they borrow from each other to propagate this narrative.
So organizationally they might be different, but ideologically they are together, is what you are to say.
Absolutely, with the same agenda that they have.
The agenda is the same.
Correct.
But in this calendar, as we discussed in the past, Jerry, as a summary of this calendar and also for the month of January, we discussed that it is about decolonialization, or coming out of the colonial system, coming out of the colonial understanding of what India is. But what do you mean? I mean, last time you spent some time in dealing with this question that I raised, but I wanted to so that the audience may also come to us a little bit of more understanding. where do we go and stop with decolonization? Or decolonizing to what?
Sure. Let me answer your question by giving a proper initial background and then directly answering your question.
Yeah.
Let us understand that this colonization is a millennium old project, in the sense every other culture in the world, if you look at them, they have all colonized. In fact, even the word colony comes from the Roman emperor, Roman Empire. That is almost 300 years before Christ.
Right.
They started using the words colony. So colonization, that is only for the English word colony, but the idea of colonization is there across cultures. See, if you look at the dynasties in India, they were not one colony was not being replaced by a republic. If it is Gupta dynasty, it is Mayura dynasty, it is one dynasty after the other dynasty which is colonizing.
Right.
So colonization, there is nothing unique in British colonization. That is the least original of all the British contribution, because they were just following the other colonization. But what is unique among them is that along with the British colonization, the idea of liberty, the idea of equality, those ideas leaked into their cultures. In fact, before I quote, say, any of the Christians, let me quote the prominent Hindu leader, a social reformer, Sri Narayana Guru. Sri Narayana Guru of Kerala. Like many of the audience can search if they have not heard him, but he is one of the topmost reformers in Kerala from the Hinduism. And he explicitly highly praised, commented on the Britishers. This is what he said. If in his biography published by M.K. Sanu, who is again from the Hindu community, he says that Sri Narayana Guru said, Britishers are my Guru. Now, I will never say that, but I am quoting his perspective. We must understand the marginalized community's perspective. He said, Britishers are my Guru. They are the one who gave me this, the saffron cloth. They are the one who made me a Swami. So his disciples were greatly threatened, or they were worried. They asked, Guru, how can you even say that? Then Sri Narayana Guru says, see, if it was a Brahmanical system, if it was according to the Hindu Dharma Shastra, can I even ever think of becoming a Swami? They said no. He said, if that happened, it would have been like my head would have been chopped off, like how Sri Rama chopped off Sambuka's head. So he said, this freedom was given to me by the Britishers, hence they are my gurus. Now, this is something unique about the British colonization. I don't think that it is directly from the British Empire, but those are the Christian ideas which the missionaries propagated in India. Again, as Jyotirao Phule would rightly put it in his book on the slavery. He has also said, it is only these missionaries who started preaching. So what is unique about the British colonization is not the colonization. What is unique about the British colonization happens to be something different from the colonization itself. It is actually the missionaries' contribution of the liberty, equality and all. Now, when you are saying you are decolonizing, what exactly are you decolonizing? Are you going to decolonize and re-Brahmanize India? Now, re-Brahmanize...
I want to explore a little bit more about that word. What do you mean by re-Brahmanize? Yeah,
Sure.
These are two very important terms that you're using. Number one, you're saying decolonize, which simply, people in general, people think that decolonizing is basically coming out of the British regime or British way of thinking, popularly. But you are giving it a little bit more deeper definition, saying that, it is not just that, but there is a lot that that went into colonizing. Basically, it is not just there is a lot of freedom and education and everything that came along with the colonizing from the British. But when you say re-Brahminizing, what are you trying to say there?
So let me just quote, instead of me putting my own opinion, let me just quote from the Sanskrit books, medieval or ancient Sanskrit books. Tantra Vartika or Kumarila Bhatta. Now, Kumarila Bhatta, we must know the historical importance of him. he was one of the person who played a key role in re-Brahmanizing India from Buddhism.
Mm.
So in his book, Tandravartika, there is a text called Adhikarana 6, and he says the entire South India, like especially the Andhra and beyond, are mlecha or foreign lands.
Mm. Mm.
Now, how do you make them a place where the Brahmins can stay?
Mm.
So then they go on to say that if you impose the caste system,
Mm.
and if you start practicing, then that will become an Aryavarta.
Mm.
So that is how they colonized.
So are you saying that there have always, I mean, there is always already a prototype of what is re-Brahmanizing is?
Correct. So you attribute everything to the Sanskrit, you attribute everything to the caste hierarchy, you attribute the supremacy to that. Example, if you want to look at again the re-Brahmanization, look at say there is a study done by Asko Parpula. Asko Parpula is considered as one of the greatest authorities on the Indus Valley civilization. Now this particular study, though it is not related to the Indus Valley civilization, this is related to the Chatan or the demon worship in Kerala. So he came to a place called Thrissur. And he went to the people who were worshipping traditionally this Chatan, and asked them, what is the genealogy of this Chatan? They said there is no genealogy. And then he went to the Brahmins and asked them the same question. Now this happened in the last century.
Okay.
So then they said, no, this is one of the avatars of the Vishnu. So they created a genealogy, and then they became the key authorities of this Chatan worship. So once they have created the genealogy, once they have attributed themselves, then they say that this is a Hindu god, therefore we are the Hindu Brahmins and we are supposed to be the Hindu priests. Now if you come to Thrissur, Kerala right now, the Brahmins over there are very rich. And how did they become rich? Because they took the monopoly of the Chatan worship, which was a local worship, local deity. They converted it into genealogy in the Vishnu genealogy or one of the avatars, and then they became the priests, and then they have completely chased out the others who were traditionally worshipping, and then they have taken the complete control.
So
Same thing happened for
can we call re-Brahmanizing is basically converting the masses, converting the local masses into branches or offshoots of Hinduism and then rule over them? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that has happened. That has happened at many places, and I'm sure that you are aware of the research materials, even if about the Ayyappa, for example.
Oh yes.
Ayyappa now is considered as one of the Shabrimala is considered as one of the greatest pilgrimage places. But Ayyappa is not a Hindu god. But now the Brahmins are ruling over.
So can you tell us a little bit more about it? What do you mean by Ayyappa is not a Hindu god?
You take the example, Praveen, let us take the example of Bhagavata. For example, Bhagavata gives you the genealogy of all the gods. Bhagavata gives you like who is the son of whom and all. Can you give me one single quote from anywhere in the Bhagavata which speaks about Ayyappa? There is nothing. Ayyappa is not there in any of the key Puranic texts which relates to the Hindu gods. And again, you think about the black cloth that they were wearing. Have you seen anywhere else the Hindu can wear a black cloth? No, they cannot. See, these are local customs. And until 1950s, remember this, we are not even 100 years. Until 1950s, there were chicken sacrifices. There were sacrifices in the Shabrimala, which they stopped. The Brahmins stopped because they don't eat non-veg right now for some reasons. So now they have taken over the entire system. And who benefited from it? Certain Brahminical families, because they have become richer and richer. So they created now a genealogy for Ayyappa also as Harihara Sudha. So they attached it to Shasta, who is the son of Vishnu and Shiva. Now Ayyappa and Shasta, they combined it together. Now they have taken over the complete thing. The people who were traditionally worshipping, they are out.
So that is what re-Brahminizing is.
Yes, you give the genealogy of everything to the Brahminical system. Now we have taken the example of gods. Now they have traced back to genealogy which did not exist at all. But once you have established the genealogy, then you take hand of saying that this is mine, which happened in at least in 2 places. Now that is what exactly this calendar is doing. In the cultural settings, they are again saying the genealogy of everything, the genetic, the origin of everything is in the Vedic system. Now the moment that they say that this is all in the Vedic system, all the others who are not connected with, they are out of it. Correct? So they are the ones who are doing colonization. They are continuing the colonization here right now, and that is the re-Brahmanization, the entire effect of trying to take up all the knowledge in the India, all the good things in India, and trying to trace it through the Vedic system. Because the moment you say Indus Valley is not part of you, see that the damage it can do. The greatest one of the greatest civilization that existed in India is not Brahminical. So what are you big claiming about it? So they have to claim the origin for that. And once they have the origin, then definitely they start ruling over it. So that is what is happening in the calendar. That is what is happening in the other places where they try to trace back genealogy of everything. I took the example of gods because it is easy to understand. But the same process they follow it everywhere else, and they are doing the re-Brahmanization right now.
Right. We have George also with us. Before we go to George, I wanted to have ask you one more question and then move the questions to George. You talked about Indus Valley civilization. I mean, the challenge that the Indus Valley civilization, if it is not connected to Brahminical settlement or Aryan settlement, it does a lot of damage, is what you're trying to say. But how can you say that the Aryans, at least etymology, or do you have any evidence for that? Last week we spoke about it, but how? Why do we have to prove that Aryans came from outside?
See, Aryans came from outside. One is a historical fact. Second, as we discuss right now, everything in India, Aryans have their own contribution. We are not against the Aryans. We are not against people of the Aryan origin.
Okay.
What we are saying is that you do not have monopoly in India. You are just one like all of us. So how they try to marginalize Christians, you think about it. They say that we are a foreign religion. Now, on what basis you are saying we are foreign religion? We are here from the 1st century itself, right? You came to South India after the 1st century. You came to Kerala, you came to Andhra, Telangana and all after the 1st century. So, you are not foreigners, but we are foreigners. So the moment you try to label us as foreigners, and then you are trying to marginalize us. But we are pointing out that, this kind of transaction, this kind of movement has happened throughout, and you are just one of them. They are the one who are having a problem there. We do not have a problem. We don't want to say that because you came from outside, you are not a part of it, or you don't have contribution. We are not saying it. But they are the ones who are saying it. They are trying to marginalize all the other religions, all the other cultures in India. And that is where we have the problem. And that is why we need to prove that this is not the Aryan.
Right. I'll come back to you with the symbols that are there in the in the calendar. Let me go to George and ask him about his opinion on the cyclic time and reincarnation that the February calendar of IIT Kharagpur says. There is a swastika there, if you can see, George. Does that provide an evidence? Do you agree with the people who prepared this calendar that these swastikas represent the Vedic cyclic periods or the Vedic reincarnations?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank God for that. When they are bringing these symbols have been interpreted by many scholars differently. Okay, so this is one of the interpretations that they are giving, and even if it represents, actually doesn't prove that they are indigenous, because there are many other evidences which disprove that they are indigenous. at least the migration theory has much more evidence than what they are speaking, showing this swastika and things like that. And if you read whatever they have said in the February February page of the calendar, there are many things. Even if the quotations, the first quotation from Rig Veda, I searched, I read many scholars that they have searched. I personally searched, but you can't find it. The reference that they give, you don't find it there.
You don't find that concept, is what you're saying?
It is not just the concept. You don't find those words what they are speaking of.
The words, okay?
Yes.
This is a very serious allegation, George. Are you saying that they made up those words for themselves? I mean, to prove their concept?
See, I'm not saying that they could have made up the words or anything like that. Maybe I'm willing to give them the benefit of doubt, as any scholar should be doing. And I would like them to correct the reference if the reference was wrong, or so that's what I would like them to do. So many things like that. The evidence that they are providing doesn't stick. So I would say the cyclic time, as you have asked, there are many cultures which speak about cyclic time in the ancient past. All the Middle Eastern cultures. I'm not speaking about Islamic culture here. Okay. So other cultures were there, the Mesopotamian and the Egyptian and all those people. They also spoke about the cyclic time. So what are we talking about? There may be differences in the way each one understood cyclic time and cosmology. There may be differences. Every culture would have differences. But every culture, if you take the big picture, every culture spoke similar things as well. So if you take the similarities as the basis of study, this is not unique. This is not unique to Vedic culture or anything like that. And in fact, we can discuss cyclic time, with other questions. Recently, when it comes to cyclic time, many people have spoken about it, which is known as the B theory of time. It cannot be substantiated existentially. So that's what that could be another side of things that we can discuss. But if you want to. But what I see is whatever evidence is provided in the February calendar, whether it is cyclic time or that they are indigenous, it doesn't support that they are indigenous to India. It doesn't substantiate, or it is not at all a solid evidence towards that. And further, it doesn't even build a case that the colonial period has distorted and played around with these kinds of evidence. They haven't presented, the evidence properly.
How would you respond? How would you respond if Professor Joy Sen, who is a primary contributor to this calendar, if he comes up and says, "Hey, you know what? You are suffering from colonial, hangover. You are actually too much drunk in colonial thought process, and that's the reason with that kind of hangover you're speaking like that. Because you're taught in that way, you're not able to digest the alternate truth that we are presenting. How would you respond to them?
In fact, if they say it is a colonial hangover, and if they present cyclic time, then actually they lose ground even to refute, colonial hangover or anything like that, because they should, if they don't subscribe to a linear time, they lose all absolute value when it comes to past, present, and future.
So you are saying in the past. So you are saying the philosophy that they are proposing or they are supporting now is not viable. They can't measure their own history if they get into that cyclical time. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. In one way, yes. See, they are borrowing from me, that is the Christian faith, or the Abrahamic religion, and they have to speak that the colonial mindset or something like that has distorted what is actual facts about their religion or about whatever indigenous evidence was there.
And why is it so?
that was
Why is it so? Why should they borrow?
if they have to come back to the linear understanding of time to speak about it, because colonialism was in the past, if you take the linear understanding, and
Right.
we think that the past has already gone by, it doesn't exist anymore. The future is only exist as a potential. It is not real as of now. So only the present is real. That's what we understand, who speak about linear time. But when it comes to their understanding of cyclic time, they have to say that the past also sort of in a sense is real, okay, and the future is also real, okay. So if that is the case, that is the reason the perpetration of violence and everything happens, because that's what they want to do. They want to punish the Mughal, the mistakes of Mughals on present Muslims, the mistakes of some, they say that Inquisition, if there was an Inquisition, we should do a proper study about that.
So you are taking,
and if at all,
so you are taking more of a philosophical approach to this calendar and the idea, right? Is that what just to try and get a gist of what you're trying to say?
Right now, what I'm saying is the outworking of this philosophy of cyclic time, because it is real in the past, they want to punish if there was a mistake by the colonialism. Obviously, I would say there were many mistakes that the colonials did. They want to punish, they want to rub it over the Christians and say they want to punish them. They want to rub the Mughal mistakes and want to punish the Muslims, because the past is also real for them. The past is not bygone. They don't, so because it is real, they have to be there. The present have to that idea. We can't actually live and have a viable life even if you go by that philosophy. So in fact, philosophically,
it's one question whether that concept is viable or not, but it's entirely all a different question whether it is it belonged to this particular land in the times of Indus Valley civilization. If it belonged to, and if that is, no matter how viable it is or how viable it is not, if that belonged to this land and if belonged to this culture or this lifestyle, and it is today, if it is practiced like that, does that prove, as they are saying, Guruvada or Avataravada, which is cyclical in their reincarnation also, the Avataravada, if that is what they are continuing believing, does that prove that they originate from this land and they are the indigenous people of this land? Talking facts.
I don't think so. See, the references, the one thing that I pointed out is the references that they give is also not found, cannot be found, okay. And within the Indian religious philosophy or religious systems, everybody agrees that it is not just the Vedic religion that had the concept of cyclic time. And what kind of cyclic time are they speaking of? Is another question. So the Vedic, it is, Buddhism speaks about it. So, and many scholars say that Buddhism was prior to Hinduism. So, what, they could have borrowed from, they could have migrated. Many scholars agree that there was a migration. The genetics prove it. They can't disprove the genetics. So, if there was a migration, and after coming here, they could have borrowed from the Buddhist.
So,
who were existing here.
yeah, let me get back to you on that point, and let me go to Jerry. Jerry, there, the explanation of that calendar says like this: the third mandala of of the same Veda, Rig Veda, I think, 26, 2 and 7. This is the science of pain genesis, which constitutes the essence and practice of Indian spirituality, which is prognosis or gnosis. It is based on, it is more like a agnostic or Gnostic foundation of Indian spirituality, which is alien to the unknown elements to the civilization, which is like Europe and Caucasians. So, how can we believe that the Indo-Germanic or Caucasians or Europeans or somebody else came to India, and that is the reason the Western mindset that visited India after that, they do not have this Indian knowledge system. So, by saying this, can they afford to prove that the swastikas actually represented accurately about the reincarnation and cyclic time and etc., etc.? What do you think?
Yeah, Brother Praveen, let me reply in two parts.
Okay.
One is the factual error.
Okay.
Second is the methodological error.
Okay.
Factual error is one. As George already pointed out, the Rigveda third mandala, the hymn number 26, does not have any reference to this.
Okay.
And again, if you look at the Sayanacharya's commentary, Sayanacharya, the same commentary for the same mandala, the same hymn, does not have any reference to it. So that's a factual error.
Okay.
But as George rightly pointed out,
what about the other references? There are other references also that they gave, right?
Yeah.
Rigveda 7th is also doesn't speak about anything what they are mentioning.
Okay.
So, but there is a counter evidence. Brother Praveen, let me add to that. There is a counter evidence from the Veda itself.
Okay.
That the Vedas doesn't teach reincarnation, which will destroy the foundation of their argument and foundation of the modern this thing also. Let me give you two references.
Okay.
Rigveda does not teach reincarnation.
Okay.
Rigveda Mandala 10, hymn number 16, it calls on the Agni as a god. And in the third stanza, it says, the sun received thy hind, the wind thy spirit. And then it says, let these all members go to another place, heaven and the merit, it is to the earth or the heaven. So it is the earth or the heaven that the dead goes. Similarly, Rigveda 10, Mandala 10, hymn number 14, when it invites Yama, earlier it was inviting Agni, now it is inviting Yama, he says, come with our fathers. How can Yama come with the fathers if the fathers have already reincarnated into other creations? Again, when you come to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the 3:3, where it says, when it speaks about karma, now this is very interesting. It says that this knowledge of the karma theory was not there anywhere before it. Similarly, Chandra Yoga Upanishad 5:3, where it again says the Brahmins never had this knowledge. Until the Chandra Yoga time, the Brahmins never had this knowledge. It is not there in the Vedas. It comes in the time of the Upanishads. So on what basis they are giving a reference from the Vedas? First, they have to prove me that actually this theory exists in the Vedas. Vedas does not teach it at all. It comes in the Upanishads, and it was initially proposed by the Kshatriyas, and then that is why they say that the Brahmins until now it does not know it. So these are all factual errors. These are not methodological errors. These are all data points which they can correct if they want, and they can say, okay, we meant this and all. But there is a methodological problem.
Okay.
Which you rightly pointed out. You also mentioned that there is a cross on the calendar.
Correct.
So now if I take that symbol, methodologically, how should I interpret? Should I start saying that the Indus Valley civilization were anticipating the cross? They were looking forward to the cross. They had some idea of...
Is there a possibility of saying that?
No, see, the methodologically you cannot say it, right? Methodologically, if I start saying that, then that will be an error. Because the moment you ask, okay, the symbol is the same, but the meaning comes from the context of it.
Correct.
So, if it is applicable to the cross, then it is applicable to the swastika also. So then the question is, does the swastika has any other meaning? And then you look into the other cultures. You look into the Mexico even at 2022. Mexico, the tribals have that the native people over there still has that swastika sign.
Okay.
You look at Japan, you look at China, they all have the swastika sign. Now, none of their swastika sign has the same meaning as the Hindu interprets. They would all mean 4 winds because it is easy to show the 4 winds by the sign of the swastika as much as if you draw a cross that you can show 4 directions. So these were common symbols in every culture. First of all, they have to prove me that it did not exist anywhere, which can be easily been disproven, showing that it existed throughout every culture. Swastika existed throughout every culture, but with a different meaning. So their methodology of interpretation is wrong. They are factually wrong, and their methodology of interpretation is also wrong.
Well, we spoke about that in our previous episode also. That swastika from Egyptian culture, swastika from Mediterranean culture, etc., etc. We showed that as a pictorial representation. Also, we showed it in our previous episode. But if I can put the same question back to you, Jerry, about the swastika and also the animals that we see in the center, what do they represent? Do they represent any kind of cyclic time or incarnation?
Definitely not. What has this? See, they are doing random pictures into the calendar and they are reinterpreting it.
So all the colors that they chose, which is more like vintage, and the symbols they chose, which is more like vintage, etc., etc. The feel that they want to give into the masses is they are doing a great job of making the calendar more vintage. Is that the point in that, or is there anything data wise there is any credibility to it?
No, they are actually putting the random pictures and they are reinterpreting it. Just as much as we have seen that the naked woman of the Indus Valley civilization, they put it and they put Bharata Mata in the other image of the 21st and 20th century, and then they started saying that it is one and the same. So they have a methodological problem. They are not doing a proper historical method. See, factual errors are one, methodological errors are even more graver. So they are committing that mistake here. So which is a big question as far as professional historians are concerned. They will be more concerned about how you arrive at it. More than it is merely about data, it is also about the interpretation, which they completely missed out. They are completely missed out actually. How can you interpret that? When you look at the evidence, you look at the culture of the Indus Valley civilization as a whole, and everybody knows. I think even now a school kid also, even those who do not go to school also know that the Indus Valley civilization did not have, horses, whereas Vedas have horses. Indus Valley civilization was a proper civilization with the forts. The only mention of forts in the Vedas is actually the destruction of forts. Indus Valley civilization had a central administration, which otherwise there are same symbols everywhere. Indus Valley civilization had a central administration whereas the people of the Vedas were nomads. So if you look at the culture, they are totally different. Totally different. Now, how can you take one symbol of that culture and then start saying that this is the meaning of it? See, if you had a text which could have been interpreted, like in how the other civilization, we could have arrived at it. Now, the only way of interpreting right now is to look at all the other symbols, and all the other symbols actually goes against the people. So, therefore, there is a methodological problem. You forget about whether Vedas mention reincarnation or Vedas mention karma or anything. But that is actually a factual error. But you look at the methodology, they are not properly following any methodology also. They are assuming actually what they have to supposed to prove.
So primarily you want to say that the symbol of swastika or those animals that we see right there are not unique to Vedic culture. Therefore, they are not unique. They cannot be uniquely used by the Vedic people or Aryans to say that we belong to this land. We belong to Indus Valley civilization.
Absolutely. If you allow me to add, let me add that the Aryan itself is not unique.
Aryan itself is not
unique to the Indians.
Okay.
So, for example, if you take Sendavasta, the Parsis. So, if you take the Sendavasta of the Parsis, you start thinking about, they call themselves as Aryans. Now, the people of the Iran, the people over there, they used to call themselves as Aryans. So how is this people unique? We actually, these people, both of them have very similar, background. If you examine the Sendavasta and the Vedas. So the Aryan itself is not native to Indian. The word Aryan, for example, the word, if you look at the word Iran, the meaning of the word, literal meaning of the word Iran means the land of Aryans.
Yeah.
So Iran is the land of the Aryans. If you want to speak about Aryanization, please go back to your country, Iran. That is the literal word. The Sendavasta Parsis calls themselves Aryan, because see, you even in the Bible, you have actually the Ezra chapter 6 verse 1, where Darius, the king of the Persian, and now the same Darius died, and his inscription is there for us. The tomb inscription is there for us. Now this is what he says in the tomb inscription. Think about it, it is in BC.
Right.
It is not even in AD. It is in BC, and he says, Darius 1 inscription, tomb inscription, he says, I am a son of a Persian, an Aryan, having Aryan lineage. So this, almost 300 years before Christ, in the BC, the Persians used to describe themselves as Aryans. So how are you different from them?
So if there is an indigenous, or if there is any heritage that you can claim from, you claim there, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, you claim there. And even in their book, actually, Sendavasta, very interestingly, the Aryan native land is described. Now you have to think that actually this is another scripture which speaks about the Aryan lineage. Now they also speak about India. But India, they say that this is not the land of Aryans. They came here, and actually they would have gone from here to Iran, or before itself they would have migrated. But they say this in Sendavasta, that this land of the 7 rivers, the Sapta Sindhu, that land, the devil corrupted it by having a hot climate. We know that the Indian temperature is different from the Iran.
Right.
Hot climate, and women having peculiar issues. So they say it is not the land of the Aryans. Now here you have another ancient scripture which actually refutes the idea that the Aryans are native to Indians. See, that agrees with all the other methodological the knowledge, that modern knowledge that we have, that these people are not native to the Indians. We don't have a problem with that. They are now part of India. We consider, all of us consider themselves as India, but we have a problem when they are saying that they are the original inhabitants. They will call the Adivasis as Vanavasis. They will never call Adivasis as Adivasis, because to call Adivasis as Adivasis is to give them the credit. So this is what we are objecting. For example, RSS will not call Adivasis as Adivasis. They will always call them as Vanavasis. Why? Because they don't want to give the priority to them. Now we have a problem with that. But Praveen, we don't have a problem treating everybody as part of Indians. Whether you have come from Persia or whether you have come from any of the land, as long as you are in this country and you are a citizen of this country, you are an Indian and you have some contribution. But here, look at their agenda. They will never accept.
Well, looks like there is a technical problem. Now are you back? Yeah, I mean, we lost you for a couple of seconds, Jerry.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that, see, the entire discussion, we will also have to keep their agenda behind it. While looking at the historical facts and the methodological problem, we have to look at the danger of the agenda. Danger of the agenda is to delegitimize everybody else. They have a big problem. They have a struggle in accepting Adivasis as Adivasis, and they want to always call them as Vanavasis. They don't want to accept any other culture or any other people as part of India. That is the biggest problem. Otherwise, we don't have any problem. They have a problem and they are colonizing us. Whereas they are accusing us of having a colonial mindset. They are the ones who are colonizing us, if you look at the agenda.
So going to George. George, what can be your response to, as a person who believes in Bible, or as a person because you are a person who believes in Bible, and obviously you are from, by definition, you believe in a foreign religion and you are influenced by the foreign ideas. That's the reason you are speaking in this way. You know, you are speaking about decolonizing. When Hindutva, when the governments or when the ideas in India are trying to bring you back to the Indian ways of Indian knowledge system, you obviously will have a problem because you are already deeply immersed into this foreign understanding of what the knowledge system is, looks like. So, is that the reason why you are agitated, or why you are upset with this theory?
See, I mean, if they say that, I would also speak about what the indigenous, as they call it, Hindutva did in the recent past. There are many facts that we can look at. Even in North India, even today, the Dalits are not allowed to touch the water pot. So they would say that was the colonial mentality, the divide and rule. So the colonials have gone. Why are they doing it still? So, if they accuse me of that, being colonial, I'm not colonial. I'm willing to accept everyone born in this land as Indians. And genetically, they have proved that, who's an Indian and who's not an Indian. So that way we know that who's an Indian and who came from outside genetically. But I don't want to propose that whoever came from outside shouldn't live in India as these people do. I'm much more tolerant than that. I want to give constitutional rights to all the people, recognizing their, if the constitution gives rights for, because they are minority or because of the economic status and things like that, to uplift the communities, I want to do that. But they don't want to have even secular in the constitution because they want to make it Hindu. And what do they mean by Hindu? Now, as Jerry has pointed out, they want to include the Adivasis. The Adivasi, when we say Adi is the ancient dwellers of this land, they don't want to call them that because they want to be the ancient dwellers. And if they are the ancient dwellers, they haven't for ages, as long as they have dwelt in India, they haven't allowed the Adivasis or any Vasi that way, who are the indigenous people of this land, to even prosper, to hold any property, to study anything. So I don't want to do that. So they had the colonial mentality right from the beginning. And even if you go to some of the South Indian states and even in North India, the villages have the outside dwellers, and that is not the colonial thing that happened. And the temple entry, we can speak, continuously about what these people did, and especially the people who are proposing, in the name of colonialism and promoting the indigenous idea, that they are the indigenous original idea. What they did, if you go to any village, they are outside people and they are inside people. Inside people are all these people who speak about the Aryan religion, and the outside are actually the indigenous people who are suppressed, who are marginalized, who don't have any rights.
So are you trying to say, if we decolonize societies, we will go back to the same old system, and that is what the Hindutva wants to do?
See, they have an agenda to speak about this. They are saying that, when they speak about Muslim or any Dalit convert or any Christian, what they are saying is, right from the beginning, you are Hindus. So what are they saying? The Hindu is the original thing. So Hindu should remain in India. That is the idea that they are proposing. Isn't it?
Right.
So that's not what the constitution says. And they want to rewrite the constitution. And citizenship rights are given in a particular way too, for people who have lived for so many years in India, or foreign people who are, whose children have been born here in India.
Do you see an attempt to change the narrative, popular narrative among the political and thinking society, or educated society, using such media like calendars and etc., just to make sure that they are ready, they're preparing, the slowly simmering or slowly let the pot boil slowly, and once it reaches the right time, they can actually mix whatever they want to mix in that pot. But so using this media, using calendars like this, their attempt is to make sure that the popular narrative or the ancient is Hindu and Hindu only is what they want to try to say.
Yes, see, what they are doing is they are trying to push this agenda and trying to get a buy-in from people. And see, one more thing, what I seriously want to point out, they don't want to speak about any kind of development, any kind of upliftment of people, creating jobs for people. And one more thing I would like to point out here is, see, I want to answer your question a bit indirectly. That's why I'm bringing this up. The railways trying to be sold and being privatized, because railways are the where it uplifted many families, many people, especially in the name of reservation. Many people got jobs in the railway, and many families have been uplifted. And if it is privatized in the private sector, Praveen, can you find a job based on your caste or based on your social status? I don't think so. You can find a job based on your social status. So that is the agenda, to put them in their place, put all the SC, ST, BCs, OBCs and everyone in their place. That is the agenda. That's the reason, the biggest employment generator from the government has been privatized slowly. So there will not be any jobs given to all these people in the future. So that is the agenda. So that is where these people want to lead the entire economy. And if I don't have a colonial mentality as a Christian, because the Bible says there shall be one law for a slave and even for the native born. There shall be one law. If even a slave or a stranger, or that is, these people, if they want to call me a stranger, if as a Christian, if I want to call somebody a stranger, I should treat them the same way. If the stranger kills, he would be having the same punishment. If the native, that is, the native born, if they kill, they would have the same punishment. But in their own books, they do not prescribe in such a way. A Brahmin would have one punishment, Kshatriya would have one punishment, the Shudra would have one punishment. So that is their prescriptive moral law, and that is colonialism. That is what they want to do. And see, as a Christian, I'm not colonial. I want to include even them, but they should set aside their mentality that, only the Adivasis, that is, as they want to call themselves Adivasis now, that is the agenda. So only the ancient indigenous people would be preferred in this land, and everybody should leave. Everybody should prescribe to that ancient indigenous ideology or philosophy. If they want to come up with that, that's not constitutional. That's if that is the agenda. That is colonialism. That is snubbing somebody, and that is inquisition, I would say. That's what they are. That's what they want to do. And as you said, slowly they want to, push this agenda into the society so that they would slowly do everything, whatever they did. And I would like to point out from the Bible, and Hitler did the same thing too. See, Pharaoh was the first nationalist in history that we read. Pharaoh was the first nationalist. He said that there wasn't any threat actually. There wasn't any threat from the Jews or the people of Israel. But there, he said, he propagated a false belief that these people would join somebody and they would invade or take over Egypt. That is the fear psychosis on which Pharaoh functioned, and he subjugated the Jews, or he subjugated the Israeli people. So that's what happened in the Bible. And later on, once people bought into that idea, he sold the idea that every male child should be killed. As you said, once they start buying in, they would push more crueler and crueler forms of oppression on all the people whom they want to colonize.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's time to wrap this up. Let me take final remarks from you, Jerry. Since you spoke about decolonizing as re-Hinduizing or re-Brahminizing, if to put it more specific, the Hindutva, the forces of Hindutva or the ideology of Hindutva is on a mission to decolonize India. In their opinion, it is becoming more Indian, becoming more natural, becoming more sons of the earth, soil, etc. But you have objections, Jerry, because you have this Christian colonial mindset, and you said you have the symbols, for example, swastika or cross, anything like that. It is not indigenous to this community only, this nation only. There is the same symbol used by Egyptians, same symbol used by Mexicans, as you said, people in Amazon, people in Japan, etc. That simply proves my point of Hindutva if they say that we were all Hindus at one point of time. The whole world was Hindu, and you people, you colonized us and slowly converted us to something else, or hijacked us to something else. So how would you respond? I want to take this as a final remark.
Yeah. Brother Praveen, you asked a very good question. But fortunately for us, the Hindu Dharma Shastras itself has given us the geographical location of where the Hindus are, especially in the AD, when it is written, for example, Manusmriti probably written in somewhere in AD 300. So they have given very specific location of where the Aryavarta is. Now that is after the Aryan migration. Now let's read it. Manusmriti chapter 2 verse 20. It says Aryavarta is from Himalaya to the Madhya Desha, or what we call as Madhya Pradesh right now. That is the location of the Aryavarta as per the Hindu text. It is not an interpretation, it is directly from the Hindu text. Now that is in AD. Now think about it. What was then the South India and the Maharashtra and all the other regions? As per them itself, that was not a part of the Hindu system, right? And the Mexicans, the Japanese, they are nowhere in the Manusmriti as part of the Aryavarta. So even if I go by your text, I can actually go by the, say, Rigveda onwards.
But just now you mentioned that actual Aryans, in their different text, they say that Arya land is in Iran, and it went all the way up to Afghanistan or Punjab maybe. So now we are shifting gears to Hindu texts.
See, that is what happened. Actually, both of these groups are together. Were together at one point before they parted with each other.
Okay. And so that is what you see as the Aryan settlement.
Aryan settlement, and especially you go to the text, you have very clear evidence of it. We don't have time, but let's at least look at one evidence. Asura in the Rigveda is a demon.
Okay.
Now, when you go to the Sendavasta, the highest of the god is Ahasudura. So that is the Asura there. Asura. So you have actually, after these two people have parted, they started calling each other's god as demons, and their demons, the one party's demon is the other party's god, and in the other way as well.
Okay.
So if you look at this, so they have parted. There was some conflict, and they have parted. And now, when you look at their text, Sendavasta, if you take it for the Aryans, then India is not part of the Aryans. Now, if you take the Hindus text and look at the Hindu text where the Aryan land, unfortunately for the current Hindutva people, the South India is not part of the Aryavarta. So, whichever argument that you bring, that is not a full text. So, the point that I was trying to make is that you started saying that you pointed out their argument that the Christians are foreigners, the Christianity religion is foreigner.
Oh yeah.
So I am actually referring to that as well. If you call me as a foreigner, should I from South India start calling you as a foreigner? Because your text says that you are not part of the South India. See, we don't want to go into that argument. Manusmriti, your Dharma Shastras, one of the greatest Dharma Shastras, never acknowledge South India as part of your land. Now you are saying that no, we were everywhere. No, you are not everywhere. You are not everywhere in the Rig Veda. You are not everywhere in the Dharma Shastras. You came to the South India only at the later point of time.
How do you respond to the allegation that the Manusmriti is interpolated by the Western knowledge system? They changed it.
See, it is. So there are commentaries before the Westerners who came to the like before the British colonialism or the Portuguese colonialism or any of those Western colonialism that came into India. Before that itself, we have many commentaries on the Manusmriti. Now, if somebody has to change it, they not only have to change the Manusmriti, they also have to change the commentary, right?
So you mean to say there is lots of evidence for that?
Lots of evidence. See, you cannot go and keep on changing the text only, but you will have to also change the commentaries. And if the commentary speaks exactly the same, then you will have to accept that this as the original. You cannot dismiss. You have to, if it is an interpolation, you have to give me an evidence. I am giving you an evidence that your scholars who wrote the commentary quoted the exact text much before it. So there is no interpolation as far as this text is concerned. Now, if there is any other text, then we can look at the evidence at that point of time.
Right.
So, see, we are all migrated from each other. That migrated from different places. Even the Dravidians would have migrated from different places to India. So there is absolutely nothing against migration. There is, and as far as the Lord and God is concerned, see, He is the universal God. He is not limited to any specific geography as such. So when we call upon the name of the God, it is not that He is a Keralite or He is an Andhraite or a Telangana or any of those things. He is the God of the entire universe. So I don't know why somebody should give the label, oh, this is a foreign religion. If you go to the cultural way, then we are all foreign religions. Even the Aryans are foreign religions. So, as far as the Bible is concerned, let me conclude it with that. Genesis 1 chapter 26, Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 and 27, when God gave the authority for the man to rule, it is over the other creation. God never gave man the authority to rule over each other. So, it is the destruction of colonialism. But when you come to the Hindu Dharma Shastras, there are some who are created to rule and there are some who are created to serve. So colonialism is part of your religion. Colonialism is not part of my religion. It might have been part of the Western European culture, but it was never the part of the religion. In fact, Milton's statement, I will quote and say, end it. Milton in Paradise Lost, when he says, when the Israelites, Nimrod, not the Israelites, when Nimrod actually started ruling, and the Milton looks at it and he is shaken, and Milton actually puts the words in the mouth of Adam and says that, oh my son, God never gave us the authority to rule one man over the other. He only gave us the authority to rule over the creation. Now John Milton's that statement is the clearest example of what the Bible teaches. We are all brothers, we are all created equal, we are there not to rule over each other. With the ruling is only by mutual consent. Whereas you have a colonial agenda because your text says that some are created to be ruled and some are created to be served.
Right, right. Any final words, George?
Yes, I would like to say that just as Jerry has pointed out, we shouldn't bring this, indigenous and only the indigenous belong to this land. As the Constitution says, we should acknowledge proper citizenship of people and give them the rights as the Constitution would give them the rights. And we should also acknowledge the privileges given by the Constitution because of some evil done to them or because of economic status, and we should continue as the Constitution would give them the rights. And if they continue to speak about who is indigenous, who is not, actually we should go back and examine, saying, even their gods, I think Jerry pointed out, I think I would have missed out on that, even their gods come from Egypt. Even Shiva comes from Egypt. In Egypt, they had a wedged were who is half male and half female. So Shiva is part of the Egyptian deity. Brahma is part of the Egyptian deity, whom they called as Pita. So they came from there. We can very well, even the gods that they believe in, we can actually and the Persians believed in fire, right? And the entire Vedas is about fire, isn't it? So they came from the Persians then, because the Persian civilization is much more ancient and more studies have been done in that area. So we can link it up that way and show them that they are not from here. But we don't want to do that. Just even though this calendar comes from a repeated IIT institute with an agenda like that to prove who's indigenous, and the indigenous wants to lord it over somebody else, as Jerry has said, which is not the scriptural mandate of the Bible. So instead of that, we should help each other, serve each other. That is what the Christian mandate is, and that's what Christians have been doing in this nation, serving the marginalized, serving the people in need with education, with medical facilities, in whatever way possible. That is the call of the gospel as well, and that's what Jesus did. Jesus stood for people, in his time when he lived on this earth. He stood with people who are marginalized, whom people did not touch. Jesus touched and healed them, and people whom they did not associate, Jesus associated with them and ate with them. These people prohibited temple entry, but the God of the Bible comes and dwells in our midst. So that is not colonization. That is inviting people to come to the true God, and God himself comes and lives among men, and that is not colonization at all. And this God comes and touches the marginalized, touches people who are rejected, touches the rejected of the society, who are called sinners, who are called with all kinds of names. So Jesus was a friend of such people. So that's what I would say. And Christians are called to be like Jesus, friends of all the people who are oppressed, who are marginalized, and who are going through such atrocities. So we are not called to colonize. That's what we would say. So we should reject this idea of whoever belongs to India are the ones who are the ancients or something like that. We should reject this idea and we should live as brothers, because this idea breeds hatred. That's why they want to punish for the mistakes of the Mughals on the present Muslims, on the mistakes of crusades on the present Christians. And we can say, should the mistakes of the Hindus be punished on Hindu? I would not say that. I would not say that. The present Hindus have given up on many things. They don't want to be like that. They don't want to practice all these things. So we should encourage such kind of behavior where we practice equality, and that comes from the Bible. So that's what I would say.
Right. Well, that was eye-opener for today. Thank you very much for watching, and keep praying, keep supporting Rakshana Television, and we will be with you with yet another program on of eye-opener with a new subject, maybe next Sunday, same time. But until then, continue to pray for us. Thank you.